Hello, welcome to Home is Here. I'm your host, Fisyani Sinyama. Thank you so much for joining us again today. Home is Here is a program that is focused on showcasing the multiculturalism here in our province, Manitoba. Right now, we're taking you on a mini trip to the Philippines. The Philippine Islands became a Spanish colony during the 16th century. In 1935, the Philippines became a self-governing Commonwealth country. Manuel Quezon was elected president and was tasked with preparing the country for independence after a 10-year transition. On the 4th of July, 1946, the Republic of the Philippines attained its independence. With a population of over 102 million, the Philippine economy has been relatively resilient to global economic shocks due to less exposure to troubled international securities and lower dependence on exports. The Philippines is located in Southeastern Asia between the Philippine Sea and the South China Sea to the east of Vietnam. The climate is either tropical monsoon or oppressive humidity and plenty of rainfall. The terrain is mostly mountains with narrow coastlands. Filipino-based Tagalog and English are the official languages. Hello, welcome back. We're here in the studio with Darlene from the Philippines. Darlene, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself and your family background.
Sure. My parents are from Angono, Rizal, which is in the northern island of the Philippines.
Okay.
There are 7,000 islands, so we
7,000?
Yeah, we come from the biggest one.
Okay, that's good.
And my parents arrived here in the 1970s as part of the garment worker recruitment, and I was born in the 80s, so I'm actually Filipino-Canadian.
Okay, so you were born here in Canada.
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. Okay, so then I want you to establish for us, being an immigrant's child and having to be raised with almost two cultural backgrounds, right? What your parents were brought up with and what you see here at school and with your neighborhood and with your friends. Tell us a little bit about
Sure. Well, in the 1980s, if we can recall, that was the era of multiculturalism right under Trudeau. And at that time under immigration, it was first we bring in the workers. Now the workers want to bring in their family. So there was this family reunification stream. So I was born there, first time, second generation. And then we have all of these immigrant children now arriving. So at the time, come 60s and 70s, seeing a lot of different children from Asia, Southeast Asia, Africa, South America, Caribbean. Schools were probably not prepared or knew how to handle this kind of boom.
Diversity.
Yes, boom in diversity. So we saw a lot of anti-racism posters, multiculturalism kind of posters. And growing up, English and French is the lingua franca. You have to use that language at school. But then when you come home, your parents are working all day, and it's in another language, in another culture, in another world. So I was blessed with both worlds. So we see a lot of, as an adult, I can appreciate going into a different space and I am this and I am that. And so it can be a bit heavy, taxing at times.
Okay, so obviously there were some challenges there, right? Like when you were going to school at that time, like the school system wasn't ready for that. The community certainly wasn't ready for that. So how did you deal with some of the challenges that you were going through?
Fortunately, I'm a North End girl, and West End West End children could probably say the same. Those are very, very diverse neighborhoods. So what's happening in your house is likely happening in your neighbor's house, right? Right? And your teacher a school system might not be prepared for it, but your teacher might be of your parents' generation.
Aware
of this. Maybe they're also Filipino. So there was an expectation. I could put it that way, perhaps.
There's a balance.
Like you're so-and-so's child. You should be raised this way, perhaps, was a discussion. And for a Canadian teacher who is not who may be 3 or 4 generations in, the expectation is different. Oh, their parents are immigrant. Maybe they don't understand. And so you're a child. I remember probably never having been to the Philippines, maybe as a baby, but never really growing up, but then having friends that are not Filipino, and this expectation that you already know the language, you already know karate, or you are, you know, there's certain things they see on TV that's emulated, and that expectation is placed on you, and it, you know, if that's how you deal with a bully, well then you play that.
So, Darlene, I know you're a writer. Right, and you write a lot about children that are coming to Canada with different expectations of what Canada is, and then they come and they're like, oh. So tell us about one of your books that you've written that kind of addresses that.
Sure. Well, my favorite book, which has been taken on at the schools, is called Where is Winnipeg? And I've been working with in one of our nonprofits. It's called Anak, which means my child. And we go into the school system and we work with second, third, maybe fourth generation children whose parents, there's this expectation, this label, this identity as Filipino. And it's the legacy of our parents' immigration. So to understand what a Filipino is, you're taking this time, 60s, 70s, in the Philippines, and then you're bringing it to Canada. Philippines moves on from 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yes.
But we are here in Canada with what they've grown up with. And so we grew up with the 60s, 70s version of the Philippines. And then our children, the third generation, will grow up with our idea of what the Philippines should be from secondhand stories of that time from our parents, which we adore and love, right? These stories that connect us. And then we have newcomers that are arriving now from the 90s and 2000s.
Different generations.
And they're here now, so 60s, 70s, this is us and this is our children now. I don't know if this is going to get with the 90s, and then the 90s, and then their children. So you have all of these different generational perceptions. And so how do we, as Canadians, identify with what's happening, continuing to happen in Canada, what has stopped and is continuing in the Philippines, what has stopped here and has arrived in Canada. And all these children are coming now into our school system saying, I am this because I eat this, or I do this because my grandma does this. Everybody has a different connection to where this immigrant story begins, if it's discussed, if it's acknowledged. So my book, Where is Winnipeg, to come back to that, which I almost forgot to, is about what are all of these ideas of what that is. So it's this little girl, she's going to Winnipeg. Where is Winnipeg?
So excited.
Like, what is the child? Well, one of the stories is, that's where you walk on ice. You live in the refrigerator.
You can say that about Winnipeg.
People have lots of money in Winnipeg. That's another perception. So this little girl goes around town not exactly knowing where Winnipeg is, and she just asks all these questions. And eventually, to the end of the story, she finds out where it is. And it's family, and it's togetherness. It's that immigrant story of reconnecting. And all of those different perceptions and identities of being an immigrant carries on.
You know, I really like that, and I really like the point that you've brought out. You know, there are all these stages of generations that come in, and this one will say, well, I am Zambian because we eat nshima in Zambia. And the next generation that will come will say, well, I am Zambian because we eat rice. Because that's what they are eating at that point, right? And it's so important that we document and preserve each and every generation's story, so that at some point it's not totally lost. At some point, you know, everybody kind of has a place to go to, and they can still relate with their culture and where they come from. And so cultural preservation in one way is so important.
And it's evolving.
It is.
That's what I tell the children, because growing up as a Canadian and growing up as a Filipino, and I raised this several times with the children, they see me and they envy, oh, you don't have an accent. Oh, you're born and raised here, you know the way. And I look at them and I go, I envy you. You can say you're Filipino.
Yes,
you were born there.
Accent.
You have the accent, you have the blood, you have everything. And here, I feel like we will never be enough. because we were never raised there.
Yeah.
We have never really breathed the air.
Yes.
And here, this is all the air we've known, is
Yes.
the exhale of our generations before us. And so there is this misunderstanding between generations of this imbalance of
and
who
I guess
has
there's
more.
a longing, eh? There's
Yes,
a longing, oh,
to
you know, I
feel
wish
accepted.
that I could have been born there. And that's why it's important to carry on some of the cultures, even in a home, right? Because you might think your children are not paying attention or they don't think about these things, but they actually do. And so carrying on with the traditions, the language, if you can still speak it to your kids. You know, if you've got a certain way you eat, do it that way, you know? Because, I mean, you can't afford to take a trip to Zambia every month.
It would be nice.
So you it would be nice to, I would take it, right? Okay, so tell me, for your parents then, was Canada what they expected it to be?
My mother and my father both have humble backgrounds. So the opportunity for my mother to come to Canada was one she grasped almost immediately. And to be a woman in her early 20s, and this is, she'll probably watch this and know that I admire the strength and the courage for a woman in a very patriarchal society to leave, like many women do now from the Philippines, to work. And not only to support herself in a country she's never known, but to but to also support her family. And then to have a family here.
And you know, like she's not just doing it to support her family, she's not just doing it for herself, but she's being a role model in that space, in that time. What she's doing, her children are watching, and other people are watching, and there's strength that you can do it just because you're in a different country. And you know, we are so blessed to be in Canada, because Canada, I think, is one of the few countries where you can come and you are accepted and you are brought in, and people actually want to know where you're coming from. Canadians are curious. They love to know, oh, where do you come from? What food do you eat? And that's why we have all these different restaurants, and I love it here because I am all about food. I love food. So you go out and you can experience Mexico, you can experience Philippines, you can experience India, and all those things. And so I'm really happy that you're sharing this story with me. Yeah. So we're still coming back after this. Don't go away. Okay, welcome back, and we're still here with Darlene. Darlene, I have a question for you. And I'm really excited to hear what you're going to say about it, given all the stories that you've told us. What are some of the things that you admire and love about your culture?
Oh, see, I've been blessed with having the opportunity to live in the Philippines as well. So growing up, being Filipino was about being perfect almost, to being that role model. As the eldest sister of us 3 children, there was an expectation to be responsible, to be intelligent, to be respectful, and to be everything that is expected of a good child, right? And I would say that was strongly Filipino, because all of us peers had this responsibility, even over the boys in our class, to be the responsible, maternal kind of person. I remember that of the 3 of us, and then living in the Philippines and seeing life in such disparity, such different spectrums. You see marble floors in some of the hotels and other places. It's very humbling, but you see this persistence, and you don't hear that in our culture. If you get asked that question, you'll say family, hard work, but I would say it's persistence. You do something, you do it to the nth degree, you do it with love and with passion. And if it's survival, if it's wealth, if it's learning your culture, if it's art, like I'm very blessed to come from a town in the Philippines which is called the artists' capital. Oh. So we have a lot of national artists coming from our town, and so we're very proud of that.
That is awesome.
National painters, symphonic orchestras, everything, just beautiful. If we have these fiestas, it's part of our Spanish Catholic tradition.
Okay.
And every few months, there's a patron saint that needs to be celebrated. And it is beyond
big celebration.
Party beyond party. And it's just the artistry and the beauty and the persistence, again, of culture and our indigenous culture blending with our Catholic culture and the family and
togetherness,
everything, just this persistence that will not die. And that, I would say, is something I would admire in our culture.
Amazing.
Something like has come to Canada as well. If you're going to work, you're going to be the best at it. You're going to work hard at it. And it's, I don't know if it's because we're Filipino, but it's just, it's how you breathe, it's how you live. Don't
no mediocrity.
Don't do it halfway.
Yeah.
Persist.
Go for it.
Go for it, and then of course, if you're a female, be perfect at it. Right?
Yeah, that is totally amazing. So give me your thoughts on multiculturalism. As you know, Manitoba is one of the provinces in Canada that is very multicultural, very, very diverse, unlike you have seen. And so I would really like to hear your thoughts about multiculturalism in general. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Multiculturalism, our perception of multiculturalism, we often define by race and quote-unquote culture. But we have to understand within these different races and cultures, there is also a diversity, a multiculturalism within that.
Tell me what you mean by that.
So to assume that a Filipino is just a Filipino versus a Zambian versus, I don't know, Chinese versus Vietnamese, understand that I'm also Tagalog. We are different. We are all, and I am also Canadian. I am also second generation. There is depth to my culture. There is depth to your understanding of me. So if you're going to say multiculturalism is great, know it throughout its depth.
Its depth, yes.
Don't just assume that, okay, I know a Filipino and he cooks really good.
My friends are diverse. I have a multicultural friend group.
Yeah, I checked that off. I checked that off, so I'm multicultural. No, there is more to being multicultural, more to being more to understanding diversity. It's in building friendship, in building understanding, and to say one is multicultural is not enough. And as much as I admire and love to say that we are, mean it in its fullest. Mean it in its complete depth of understanding. That what truly is multicultural is this difference. It's not different puzzle pieces. It's the designs and the art within each piece that comes together with another piece. That's how I would define multiculturalism.
That is awesome. It's almost like, you know, sometimes we'll tend to look at multiculturalism on the surface. It's easy to say, because I'm black, because you're Filipino, and the next person is Caucasian, it's easy to say that's multiculturalism. But it's deeper than that.
Or it's just to say that all black people are African.
Exactly.
No, excuse me. There are countries within this continent.
This continent called Africa. Lots of them too. That's very true. Get that right. But you know, I just like that you say, you know, you have to be able to understand where that person is coming from, to be able to actually take it a step forward and understand how they think or why they think that way and how they behave too. Then you can truly appreciate multiculturalism, because only then can you truly work together, right? Can you truly pull off great things together? But if you're only understanding multiculturalism on the surface by what I look like, then you probably miss it.
You've created a detriment to yourself. You missed out the opportunity to understand this person, this culture, and this, you know, this Canadianness of this person.
We'll be coming back. Don't go away. Okay, Darlene, so we've talked about everything else, but I want you to tell me about weddings in the Philippines. I know things have evolved and things have changed. Tell us a little bit about a wedding. How does that go?
Weddings are parties. They're massive, massive, giant parties. But then look at the different traditions. There's Catholicism being the major religion in the Philippines. There's definitely not expectation, but there's a process that happens through the church, right? And I think there's pieces that are unique to the Philippines. There's the infinity. It's a loop in the shape of an infinity.
Okay.
That one puts around the husband and the other around the bride.
Okay.
And then there's the shawl. And there's the coin bearer, the Bible bearer, and there's all of those different things. And then there's also different other religions. Iglesia Ni Cristo, which is a Christian denomination made in the Philippines, they have a separate tradition.
Okay.
So a lot of those traditions, I find, being born and raised here, have come over to Canada.
So they actually do the infinity thing, like you've seen that in weddings here. In kind of
and the
Filipino
shawl.
Okay.
I've been to non-Filipino weddings, and I find that it's only like 10 minutes long, the mass. And then Filipino weddings are like maybe an hour long. But I do find that a tradition in the reception, you know, there's a father-daughter dance, when I grew up there was the dove release, and they don't do that anymore, I imagine, because of animal services. But there's a piece towards the end of the night when people are a little more loose and having fun, that the groomsmen come towards the groom, and they take him off guard and they strip him of his pants. That is a uniquely Canadian
Canadian-Filipino
tradition.
Okay, so your parents
No, because I hate it when I go to wedding receptions and you see these men, just big men, rush at the groom, and everyone's like, oh my God, what is happening? and the guy's being picked up and his pants are being pulled off, and they prepare for it. They have the unique underwear ready to go.
Okay.
But they say, those Filipinos, that tradition is, I'm like, no, that is a uniquely Canadian or American tradition that has evolved from here.
Yeah.
I don't know why it happened.
Yeah.
Because when I've gone to the Philippines, it's very conservative. These types of receptions. There's no one attacking anybody. But that I find is one of another cultural, probably, evolution that has come of that. I imagine it maybe came out of, I don't know.
Interesting.
I need an anthropologist to discuss that. I know it's not religious.
Yeah, it's not. It's got nothing to do with that. Okay, so does the family cook the food for the reception, or would you cater, or what's the tradition?
Wow. For the more humble weddings I've been to in my family, it has been cooked.
So if the family cooks the food, it's looked upon as humble.
It's more economical.
It's more economic. Okay, okay.
And the more elaborate ones I've been to in the hotels, and they're very fancy chefs, everything catered to.
Interesting.
Yeah, very Americanized.
Okay.
We were colonized by Spain.
Oh.
Briefly by Japan, and then by America. So it was 600 years or 400 years in a convent and 50 years in Hollywood.
Wow.
That's how one historian put it.
Yeah.
So we have our identity is also very, because of our colonization, is very different. So to talk about weddings, there's so many different denominations of Christian now in the Philippines, and our Muslim South as well, which is less talked about. So I'm very reluctant to say that there's one sweeping tradition.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but then in Canada, that pantsing thing.
That one is totally Filipino.
That is us.
Okay, so if you're going to a Filipino wedding,
Filipino-Canadian.
and you see Filipino-Canadian, she corrects me. And at the reception, if you see these groomsmen like rushing towards somebody, relax.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's the groom, he's got the problem.
Well, there you have it. That's Darlene Bautista here with us on Home is Here. And if you want to check out more of what she does, her work and her books, go to the website below and check it out. But for now, we'll be coming back with food, and you don't want to miss it. Coming right back. Hello, welcome back to Home is Here. We're still here with Darlene, and now we're going to talk about food. Darlene, tell me, what is the most important meal of the day in the Philippines?
In the Philippines, I'd probably have to say it was breakfast.
Yeah?
Because the
Why is that?
The days are very early there.
Oh, okay.
I found when I was living there. The most substantial meal is probably during the day.
Yeah.
Everything is rice-based.
Yes.
So you'd have your full-out meal during the morning. Or it's not typical to have like just bread and coffee.
Okay.
Unless they have no time.
So there's rice and is
an
there
entree,
meat
and vegetables.
for breakfast? I would
Or
love
eggs.
to live there.
There's long silog, top silog. Have you heard of those in the
No.
restaurant? So there's it's an egg, and different ways of cooking it. And you have your rice, siningag, which is garlic fried rice. And then you have your different kinds of meats. You have your tapa, your long silog, cured pork. It's very rich, very
Wow.
rich. I haven't picked up on the breakfast thing. Not quite a breakfast person.
No?
But it's very, very important meal.
Okay. So tell us what you have for us here.
So I brought here suman, which is, when I thought about Filipino food, I thought about my childhood. And these were a treat to me.
Yeah.
Because growing up in Canada and seeing palm leaves is not something you always see.
Oh, so these are palm leaves.
I believe they are some kind
Okay.
of leaf, some kind of tropical
So do you
leaf.
just open this?
Yes, it's like a package, like a little
like a
present.
present.
Yeah,
I love
a little
it.
present. I remember eating these with my cousins in the Philippines.
And what's this?
that would
this
be the
part of
same
the-
thing, yeah.
Okay.
See how ingenious they are.
I know.
And then you pull out the, just unwrap it.
Okay.
Isn't that beautiful?
Look at that.
And you don't get your hands dirty. you
It's
just stop
nicely
them
wrapped.
right
Do I
away.
have to unwrap all the way?
No, not necessarily, unless you're eating it in one bite.
Okay, no, I'm not.
And this would go good well with cocoa, hot chocolate.
Hot chocolate, yeah.
So that would be my favorite way of eating it. But
Okay.
more simpler ways, just some sugar and some sesame seeds.
So this is rice in here.
And sweet glutinous rice, yes.
Okay, what else is
What
just
else
the
is-
rice?
Just rice, yeah.
Plain rice
There might be
wrapped
some
in-
coconut.
Uh-huh.
That's pretty much it. yeah.
Rice, coconut.
There's
dip it in-
many different variations of sweet rice. This
Okay.
one's probably my favorite.
Okay.
So
And so you just dip it in?
dip it and have it go.
Okay.
You can imagine me, a little child
Sugar.
version of me.
I know.
With this
My boys would
running around.
absolutely love this. Like there's sugar on it. Who would not love
Or
that?
chocolate,
right?
and just do the bite. You think? Dense.
Very filling, I would suspect. Eh? This is really good.
Thank you.
And coconut, so you would add anything to this?
Yes, the chocolate version would be the best, I would say. Street vendors, I love street food. Street food is probably the best food if you're ever traveling. You'd find this in the Philippines there as well.
Awesome. I'm just wondering, like, what else would you? So it's always like you always have it sweet because the rice is sweet rice, right?
Yes, it would have to be the glutinous, more
Okay.
thick version of the rice. Otherwise,
Okay.
it'd fall apart.
It would fall apart. Yeah.
I guess it could be like a sushi if you were to think of it
Yes.
certain ways.
Yeah, you'd think of it like that. I just love that you add sugar to it, just like that.
I should have brought some chocolate, but it's just as delicious.
Do you have it with chocolate?
I do. My father would have us have a big bowl of hot chocolate.
Really good. Now that you talked about chocolate, I'm really wondering what would
I
this
should have
be
brought the
like with
chocolate.
chocolate?
When it's warm and hot chocolate, oh.
Maybe if you have a chocolate fountain. and
Yes, just dip and
you
eat.
you're she's giving me ideas. But you know what? Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me again.
And thank you so much for sharing this lovely food with me. There you have it, guys. That was Darlene Bautista from the Philippines. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Home is Here. Join us again next week for an all-new episode of Home is Here.